Hello everyone, this is Show here, and I have been, well, I have been trying to figure out a good idea for this video, and I think I found it. Now then, Deku and Toro, this is the day after Momo got attacked, and let us just continue where we left off. Toro was watching as Deku basically took out this villain in 2 seconds and saved Momo. It is raining, and this is whenever Deku would actually see Toro, and they would start. Well, Deku would just use his telekinesis to make like an umbrella, so just like something solid overhead so that rain cannot get on them. So he did that, and this is whenever she would just say that she likes the rain because it's one of the only times she feels that she can actually see her hands. Deku would say that that sounds kind of depressing, but he kind of gets what she means. Because some people either fear him or they just pretend he's invisible. She would say that that's kind of ironic. He would just say that yes, it is, but they fear him because he essentially holds the. They fear him because he has the most quirks ever heard of. Now then, this is whenever All Might would appear, and they are actually in the tunnel that the attack. Well, not that the attack, but they're a little bit past ways or on the street nearby where the attack happened. And this is whenever All Might is saying that he is here, but he's kind of soaked. Well, he's kind of drenched in water, and he is telling Midoriya that that was pretty impressive what he did and how fast he took out the villain. But changing the weather, that is also a very good feat of strength. Well, that is a very good feat that he didn't think that he can even do. Now, this is whenever All Might would say that usually people of your power, I would offer my quirk. But I don't know what would happen if your enhancement quirk met with or if my enhancement quirk merged with yours. Because if I were to give you 10 quirks, or if I were to give you my quirk, not only would that give you another one, but it might damage your brain even more, or it might mentally damage you more. Or it might just add some more tendencies you didn't know you had. Now, All Might's going the whole technical explanation. Deku's just saying that he doesn't want your quirk. He basically has his own version of it, or his own enhancement quirk. All Might would ask what he means, and he would immediately just start make his eyes glow again, saying that not only is this a part of the quirk, but it's somewhat very strong, because the first time he used it, he punched a tree in half. And he used about 100% at that point to blast the villain away. All Might would be impressed, saying that that's pretty impressive, and that he should work on that. He would say he does, and then he would immediately, oh my god. I woke up earlier, and I've been trying to get coffee. He would immediately ask who that girl is, or he would just say that that is the girl who grabbed onto my leg, isn't it? Dick would say, yeah, she is, but can't really blame her. Now, he would then ask Deku or if he could find a worthy successor to One For All. He would say that he can try, but since he's not taking his quirk, why don't you just give it to... I would say Todoroki. Or no. Actually, one Bleh. In my Riddick video, someone asked me how Invisible Girl got into 1A, so I'm gonna give her a reason as to how. He would say that he should just give it to Toro here. All Might would ask, why? And he would just say that not only would it boost her confidence, but you essentially have someone who can, like, who not only would they pass the quirk down after they retire, but essentially people would rarely. He would just look at her saying that he's sorry, but this is like he's gonna say something that might hurt her feelings, but it's kind of true. He would say that people don't really see Toro a lot, and even then, a powerful girl who can blast shockwaves and be invisible, that won't really catch much attention. Now, this is whenever All Might would say that if that's true, then they need to go train. Deku would say that that's not a problem because they already train a lot. In fact, they were heading over to the facility today. All Might would ask what that facility is, and they would just explain that in joint to spending time at home or doing anything like that, they essentially provide us with a gym and a lot of other things that are actually very, very expensive. Essentially, Deku goes to this specialized place. He can go to it after school or any time. He just has a key to it. And it's essentially under 24-hour lock and key. Now, Deku would go there and he would show off a lot of the equipment. All Might's asking why there seems to be a lot of, like, super, super heavy weights that, like a 500-pound dumbbell. And Deku would just say that those are training telekinesis. There is a giant flame retardant punching bag. Deku would just say that he uses that to essentially train his heater quirk. Oh crap, I need that. And his booster quirk. He would then show All Might an entire stack of books, pick them up, and start immediately reading all of them. Saying that not only can he study like this, but he can also just... This is a room made for him to train his quirks. And then All Might would ask why there's a giant needle machine over there. Deku would say that this one isn't really his favorite, but essentially it keeps him a quart low on blood at all times, so that his body has to constantly regenerate blood. Not only that, but they use it to... Not only can I use it to train my quirk, but doctors use it to actually do more studies on me and see what's going on with my body. Or essentially my quirks. Because there are still a lot of unknowns about quirklets. All Might would understand, saying that this is a pretty weird place. And he would immediately look over and see that Toro has actually already started weightlifting. And since her and Deku are actually good friends, let's say she would come with him for about at least like an hour a day to work out. So she can at least bench... Toro's 4'11 in canon. Toro's 4'11, and I think she's 100... Oh crap, what is... I just realized... I don't... Never mind. I was gonna say, I don't account for, like, body weight. I was gonna say she can, like, bench 200 pounds, but she might not even be 200 pounds. Let's say she can bench, like, 170, 180. That's a good number, because whenever I started weightlifting, that's probably the number. I think I started at that weight. I know I can already do pull-ups very easily. And those are hard to do just because you have to keep your legs straight. Anyways. Yeah, try having a straight back, but your legs always going to curve. That's not fun. Now then. This is whenever Deku would do his intense workouts where you essentially would have All Might showing Toro different ways to work out different muscles. And she's doing all that, and All Might would occasionally look over and see that not only is Deku actually throwing punches at a punching bag, but he's covered in wires and essentially being drained of a lot of blood. He would also see as Deku would weaponize his hands by essentially not creating, but tarring his entire fist and welding his fist together to be solids so that he can immediately just punch harder and harder. All Might would see this and be somewhat confused, but not really care. Deku essentially just turned his hands into blunt instruments to fight. And he's also using his telekinesis to actually lift about 1,000 pounds of weight. What I mean by this is All Might would look over, see this, and behind Deku there is just 2 floating 500-pound blocks. Along with his regeneration and his invisibility, this is not something very easy for him to train. He essentially has one quirk that he cannot train, and if you guys have been keeping track, I have only mentioned 9 quirks. Light Strider, basically Deku would just always be teleporting around the room, but he would have to be disconnected from the wires to train this one. Now, for Light Strider, all he ever does is just throw portals up around the room, going different directions. If you guys have ever seen Infinity War, he is essentially just doing what Doctor Strange did to the Avengers, where he's just throwing them into different portals and doing all that. That's actually, the way these portals would work is that he would immediately just throw one up, and no one would ever see how wide these open up, so it's somewhat hard for them to see because of how bright the flash is. So not only can it actually blind someone for a second, but it's essentially a way for him to open up a strategic way to attack. Now, after this would happen, this is whenever Deku, he would be increasing in intensity and actually working harder and harder and faster. All Might is seeing this as Deku would immediately start squatting 400 pounds of weight, and he's not even using his amp ability. And he would then see as Deku would actually be done doing that, he would go over to a pull-up bar, swing over it, put his legs there, and actually start doing, he would do crunches, or he would just lift his body weight like that, but he's also doing this with a dumbbell and a couple weights tied to his body or his arms. All Might is watching Deku do these intense workouts, saying that that's crazy, and he's going to break his body. She would just say that he hasn't seen anything yet, because that is barely Deku working up a sweat, and he would then realize that that kid is going to be a very good hero, or he's just working very intensely. She would clarify that, saying that actually working out it makes Deku feel better. All Might would somewhat understand this and start helping Toro again by showing her the different lifting techniques. Now, this is whenever after All Might would leave, because let's say that he was not buffed up and he needed to go do some hero work, or he needed to go talk with Recovery Girl at UA about his time limit and his abilities. Now, as soon as All Might left, this is whenever Deku would tell Toru, as he's still doing his curl-ups. I'm just gonna call them curl-ups, I think. No, I'm stupid. Those are arm. Yeah, that's the term for arm curls. Well, he's still doing this with his arms folded over him, and he's still just doing the sit-ups. He's still got his legs over the bar. This is whenever he would tell Toru that a lot of the things he's showing her is to actually just build muscle and actually just make it look bigger. But he's not actually working the muscle to actually give it there's a difference between making it look bigger and functionality, and he would then show her what he means by immediately just picking up a weight and moving it towards him, saying that if you curl your arms like this, you're essentially making the muscle look bigger, but if you curl them a bit differently like this is functionality. And what I mean by that is, he would then show her that, and she would actually somewhat like want to listen to Deku because of how smart he is. So she would actually start doing that, and she would ask Deku if there's another way she can train her quirk, or if she would crack a joke saying that this would be easier if she was visible, and Deku would say that, well, never mind. She would immediately just jerk Deku back to that conversation, saying, what does he mean? And he would then immediately say that, well, the doctors told me never to use my quirk or my portal ability because essentially, whenever it breaks down atoms and moves them from one space to another, it might not rearrange all of them correctly, saying that it might disable the quirk for a little while, but it might also switch our quirks, or switch one of our quirks. Essentially, it would trade one of my quirks for yours. She would immediately just tell Deku to try it. She doesn't care. He would immediately just grab her into a hug and immediately just go to suplex her. But whenever they're coming down, this is whenever, or he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't suplex her. My bad. He would go to immediately just fall backwards. She would tell Deku that this isn't very smart, as they would immediately just fall through the ground, making a portal through the other side of the room. And this is whenever she would ask if it worked, and she would look, and she would not be able to see Deku's face, and she would be surprised, and she would turn to the mirror, being met with this face. Well, this is one of the ones I found that were less. Yeah, I hope you guys know what I mean by less. Because this drawing was pretty cool down here, but the way it's drawn in certain areas is a bit questionable. So she would immediately look at her face, saying that it's so weird seeing this, and it doesn't feel right. Deku would just say that it might not feel right, but hey, at least you get to know what you look like, right? She would then look and see Deku as he had immediately returned to his workouts, but he just took off his shirt because of how sweaty it was. And she wouldn't be able to see Deku, so she would not really care, as she would then start working out and using the different techniques, actually being weirded out that she could actually see her skin. Now, after about an hour, they're working out, and she would immediately realize that their quirks are switching back because she's essentially being. Sometimes she'll be able to see through her eyelids when she thinks she can't, and it would be pretty funny to see her be confused by blinking. I'm not gonna lie, that would be hilarious. Now then, that is whenever their quirks would immediately switch back, and when this happens, there's a flash of light surrounding both of them, and Deku would just immediately look down at his hand and start moving it, saying that, your quirk is very weird, but it's kind of useful. She would ask what he means, and he would say that not only could you be a stealth hero, but taking down someone while being that quiet and that invisible, it could essentially present a very hard situation to fight you, especially if you're going to be taking All Might's quirk. She would then immediately understand what Deku means, and then she would ask Deku if they can keep switching quirks every day whenever they work out, and Deku would do this willingly. They would get to the point where after 10 months of training, she can actually somewhat turn off her quirk. And what I mean by that is, she would look like she's a... I don't know what the proper word is for that. But she would look like she's turning invisible, so you could see through her barely. but it's very, very weird to look at. But this basically means that she's learned how to cancel a bit of the signal in her brain, but not all of it fully. So she would just stay invisible. But she would like to try and turn it off a lot, as much as she can, whenever she's alone. Basically, so that she can actually clean herself, clean her face, and actually get rid of all the split ends in her hair and stuff like that. Basically, clean up. And this is whenever Deku, during the entrance exam, she would ask Deku why he's here. He would say that he wasn't going to let her do this alone, and he didn't feel like taking the recommendations anyway. They would immediately walk in. Toro would somewhat trip. Deku would immediately just use his telekinesis to grab her and put her back on her feet. And they would walk in to see that Todoroki is there too. And he would immediately see those two, saying that it's good to see you guys. And they haven't really had much time to catch up since the whole thing a couple months ago. They would say yeah, and Toro would immediately look at Todoroki and make her hand somewhat visible, waving it at Todoroki, and he would look at this and he'd be weirded out, and he would just say, explain later, and Deku would score the highest out of every single one, everybody in the room, including people during the recommendations, with his high score. He would essentially break their system by getting over 100 points. Basically, they would have been able to... Not only would Deku pass, but he would have actually improved some of the questions and modified them to actually be a bit harder and make more sense. Now then, after that, Nezu's trying to process that essentially he might have found someone around his intelligence to actually have a conversation with. Yeah. Because I feel like Nezu sometimes would probably feel like he has to dumb himself down to talk to people because of how high his IQ might actually be. Now then, because of this, as soon as Deku would actually go over this, All Might would have given Toro his quirk sometime around the training. Okay, I completely messed this up. Now then, I forgot to specify this. After about 6 to 7 months of training, All Might would have came in one day. He would have seen that Toro is actually somewhat visible, saying that she actually improved her quirk. She would say no, and All Might would hear a crash, as he would see that Deku actually fell because he was using too much weight, somewhat cracking his neck. All Might would immediately be shocked, saying that it's okay, they're going to take him to a hospital. Deku would immediately get up and just crack his neck back into place as it would heal. He would tell All Might that he's fine, but what's up? What's going on? Why is he freaking out? And he would immediately look and see that Toro is still visible, or somewhat visible, saying, oh yeah, that's something she's been trying to do, but she's not at the point where she was during the entrance exam. Now, All Might would have handed this to her, handed her the hair, given it to her, tell her it will take 3 hours to digest, and that she should try learning how to use it after that time. But essentially, Midoriya here has the same type of quirk. They are very similar, so he will guide you on how to use it whenever it is necessary. Now then, after those 3 hours, she would actually feel her quirk improve, along with a bit of, she would actually feel the spark of One For All. She would then actually say that she feels like she's more invisible or a little more visible than before. Dick would say it kind of looks like it, and he would immediately put his hand up to hers, saying that not only does she seem more visible, but he can actually hardly see through her a little bit now. She would then say that that is the weirdest way to give her a compliment, and Deku would just say that, well, she needed it. He would then teach her the basics of how to use an enhancement quirk, and she would be confused. And then she would watch as Deku would power up his all throughout his body, actually being sparked with electricity, somewhat like this, but it's red, saying that this is basically a way to use it. It's not, he doesn't call it anything special, he just calls it full body mode. She would hear him say full body and immediately kind of try and let it go through her body, where she would actually try putting it through her arms. This would kind of feel weird because she can barely move them sometimes. Deku would tell her that's not right, as she would actually somewhat figure out what he means after 2 to 3 days of trying. Now, she would power it up as much as she can, which is, let's say, 5 to 6%, and cut back to the entrance exam, where Todoroki is somewhat confused. Actually, no, not there. We cut back to the combat test, and people would see that essentially there's a girl who's barely visible, and they would see that Deku is actually walking over. And some people would recognize Deku's face and immediately move over, some wouldn't. And those who wouldn't would immediately be pulled aside by others who don't know who he is, or those who know who he is. This is whenever they would see Deku, and Ida would get in his way, and Deku would ask Ida to politely move. He would say that he's not going to let you disturb that girl over there, because he might take her odds away from her of actually getting into UA. He's going on this whole tangent. Deku would immediately just use his telekinesis to basically clamp Ida's mouth shut. He would explain to Ida that if he let him explain, he helped her actually hone her abilities for this test, and he was going to give her some encouraging words. So if he were to actually use his brain and not be a dipshit, then he would know that if he had proper communication with people, he would understand the situation a lot better. Now, do you understand what I am saying? Ingenium's brother. Ida would immediately get his mouth unclamped, saying that he is sorry and he's actually apologizing, a bit nervous. Now, this is whenever Toro would actually walk up to Deku saying that she's very nervous and she doesn't know how to feel about this, so Deku would immediately just put his hand on her shoulder saying that it's fine to be nervous, but just don't let it consume you. And just remember to just try and stay calm. She would say that that's easy for him because that's easy for you, Quirklet. People would actually somewhat hear this, and they are a bit scared to actually see what Deku can do, because the people like Deku actually usually get into UA through the actual recommendations, or they don't get into UA at all. Now, after that, because she's still somewhat visible to Deku, now Deku would immediately say that, well, he was trying to help, but if she doesn't want to take his advice, she would then say that she's a bit sorry, she's just nervous, and he would just tell her that that's fine. Just remember to count to 3, and just let it all out. Let it consume you for 3 seconds, and then just brush it to the side. Now, after that would happen, the entrance exam would officially start with President Mike saying go. Deku would immediately fly into the air with telekinesis, grabbing every robot in the entire area, crushing it into a ball, and actually destroying them. He would then light them on fire, actually melting them into a solid block. Now then, after doing that, he was actually coursing with electricity while flying, and everyone's thinking that that was the craziest thing they've ever seen, and they would immediately have to call it and resume a couple hours later or the next day with actual robots because they did not expect this. Or they would just grab the reserves from every single city they have nearby. And Deku would get first place with about 10 times All Might's score. Now, I'm going to be leaving this off of here, and I just wanted to release this before I actually probably don't release another video for 2 hours because I need to start cleaning some stuff. So I just wanted to go into detail about their training and exactly how Deku trains, along with actual character development. Now then, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and I need to cut these together.